Welcome to another mailbag session. Remember, these are questions and comments you guys leave on the channel. But before we get going on this session, remember, normal parish notices apply. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, why not? Hit the subscribe icon. If you want to be notified when new content hits the channel, it's the bell icon's the one you need. If you like the contents of this video, give it a thumbs up. Consider becoming a member of the TMTG community. It's always a big mouthful. The address is down the bottom, as are the Facebook and Instagram tags. Go tag me over there. But now back to the video. And the next one comes from Sean Curran. Hi, Sean. And he writes, in response to a rant I did about the EMU SP1200 going to make a reappearance, which was sort of March last year, which is when Isla Instruments started making all the noises, or trying to see if there was any interest in what is now known as the S2400. And he writes, I'm looking forward to the SP, as it was known at the time, SP2400. It's now the S2400. I think Brad was trying to sort of avoid any potential, what's the word I'm looking for, queries about the name, shall we say. I have a nice collection of samples from the original EMU drum machines, so they should be pretty easy to load and sample of the PROM and or disk directly via USB or SD cards. It's a very interesting one, and I saw a video from Brad the other week, and I have to be honest and say I didn't really watch the video. I saw the video, but I was kind of doing something else at the time, so I didn't really watch it. But he has stated that the units will start to ship in October 2020. I can't wait to get mine, and they should be able to load the EMU, the original EMU samples. But I have to be honest and say I have a bunch of EMU samples here, and I am really struggling to get them onto the disk library. They have a more funky disk setup than the program, so I'm going to have to sort of manually, I think, configure the imaging program, because it's not automatically picking up the disk format. But it is a funky disk format, typical of manufacturers around their time, where they all had their own formats. And why not? Because there was no universal standard, and there was no reason to have a universal standard. Next one comes from Chill Not Chill. I sort of read this the first time round. I thought it sounded like is that like was not was, or as it was more correctly stated, was not was. Anyway, I digress. This was in response to a PG1000 programmer installation video I did in 2016, in fact July 2016. And he or she writes, what is a MIDI merge? Can't I just buy another MIDI cable and run the MIDI out from the Roland into the PGs in and then back to the Roland? And the answer is yes, you can. You can, of course, run a cable out from the Roland D50 out to the PG1000 in, and from the PG1000 out to the Roland D50 or D550 in. Where you kind of come unstuck is when you try, especially with the D550, is when you try to trigger notes. Because if you have a cable that is going from the programmer out to the D50 or D550, more specifically in, you have no way of triggering the notes. So MIDI merge is a concept of merging MIDI channels. Okay, so effectively you have two MIDI channels, or multiple MIDI channels. You can have many MIDI channels, and effectively what the merge unit does is it has a logic processor in it. It looks at the signals that are coming in on the inputs, and for each one of those 16 MIDI channels, it effectively performs a cumulative sum of all the information on each one of those channels and pushes that out through the out section of the MIDI merge unit. So that's what a merge does. Now, the reason why you need a merge in this scenario is effectively the MIDI programmer or the PG1000 programmer will push data to the D50, and at the same time you want to be able to trigger notes on that particular board, as I say, specifically more on the D550 rather than the D50, because the D50 has its own keyboard, of course. But on the D50 you still need to be able to trigger notes. So effectively you need two cables running into that MIDI in. That's what the MIDI Merge unit gives you on this particular setup. And I'm assuming, you know, how I had mine set up is I actually had my D50 and my D550, sorry, not my D550, my PG1000 and my D50 set up side by side. And my D50 I could play from any keyboard in the studio, but if I was sitting there playing around with the programmer and I wanted to dump a sound into the 50, then I could dump a sound without actually having to get around the back of the keyboard and start unplugging MIDI cables. But if you've got a D50 and you want to unplug MIDI cables, you know what? You can do it that way. You don't need a MIDI merge unit. It's purely for convenience. They're not expensive. You can pick them up on eBay for $10 to $20. My advice though is go and buy a powered one. Don't buy an unpowered one, so you might need to allow another $5 for the power supply. And the reason for that is that you really want to make sure that the thing is doing what it's meant to be doing, and not taking power off the MIDI bus like a lot of these units do. Unfortunately, I've said this before on other mailbags and other videos. I don't agree with taking power off the MIDI bus or the USB bus. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I think you should power these devices independently. That way, at least you know they have enough power for whatever it is you're trying to ask them to do. And the reason I say that is because I've seen times in the past where you are powering stuff from the MIDI bus, you haven't got enough power there, and you're playing something and you get things like note dropout and note hangs because there isn't enough power, it's not performing optimally, and it just does weird things. As you can see, this mailbag session, it's gone dark. But we're going to carry on. Next one from Mondova Mona. And they write, in response to the Kordbot video on setting up MIDI and the switches done in March 2019. What stands up in this video here is the reality of an incredible small letter size and low brightness of the screen, which appears to render the device unusable on very many instances, unless you are short-sighted or love to work close to units, not what a keyboardist would want to do on stage. And the simple answer is that this device is not designed to be used on stage. My experience is that it works on the worktop in the studio or on top of the keyboard in the studio, but if you're talking about being on stage with that unit, no, it's not designed for that. I can't see it really working well in that scenario. So I agree with you. And in fact, actually, if I'm brutally honest, Brad has conceded that he thinks he got the Kordbot in terms, but if he was going to do another version of the Kordbot, he probably would change the screen.